They didn't ask her to stand. They blocked the aisle. 2 armed security officers stepped into first class like they owned the air itself. Boots heavy against the carpet, radios crackling low and constant. Conversations died mid-sentence. A glass of sparkling water paused halfway to a man's lips. Somewhere behind them, a phone lifted, slow, instinctive. And then the voice came. "Ma'am, grab your belongings. You need to exit the aircraft. Now." No greeting, no explanation. Just authority. Cold. Final. Olivia Carter didn't move. She sat in seat 2A, back straight, one hand resting lightly on the armrest, the other still holding a thin glass of water. Condensation traced a slow line down the side, catching the soft cabin light. Her expression didn't crack. Not surprise, not fear, not even irritation. Just stillness. The lead officer shifted his stance, hand brushing the edge of his utility belt. He wasn't used to hesitation, especially not from someone like her. "Did you hear me?" he said, sharper now. "You need to come with us." Around them, the cabin tightened. You could feel it, the way people leaned without moving, the way silence pressed in. Olivia lifted her eyes, not quickly, not defensively, just deliberately. Her gaze moved from the officer's boots, scuffed leather, poorly polished, to the badge clipped slightly crooked on his chest, then to his face, and she held it there. "What exactly is the issue?" she asked. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It cut clean anyway. The second officer glanced at his partner. A flicker of uncertainty passed between them, quick, almost invisible. But it was there. The lead officer recovered first. "You're interfering with boarding procedures," he said, reciting something that sounded practiced. "We've been instructed to remove you from the aircraft." Instructed by who? A beat. The officer's jaw tightened. "That's not your concern." Olivia's fingers tightened just slightly around the glass. Not enough to shake, just enough to notice if you were looking for it. Behind her, a man in a navy blazer leaned into the aisle, whispering under his breath. "What the hell is this about?" A woman across the aisle lowered her sunglasses, eyes narrowing. Another passenger angled his phone for a better view, thumb hovering over record. The cabin wasn't just watching anymore. It was waiting. Olivia set the glass down carefully on the tray beside her. No rush. No wasted movement. The soft click of glass against plastic sounded louder than it should have. "I have a confirmed first-class ticket," she said. "Seat 2A. Boarding pass verified at the gate." The officer exhaled through his nose. "Ma'am, you can either cooperate or we can make this more difficult than it needs to be." There it was. Not a request, a threat. Something shifted in the air. Subtle, but real. Olivia leaned back into her seat. Not retreating, not yielding, just settling in. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. The words landed like weight. No drama, no raised voice, just certainty. The second officer's hand hovered, uncertain now. Close enough to act, not close enough to commit. "Sir," a voice called from behind them, tight, strained. A flight attendant, early 40s, perfectly pressed uniform, smile long gone. That's her. She didn't step forward. Didn't need to. Her eyes were fixed on Olivia with something sharper than annoyance, something personal. Olivia noticed. Of course she did. The officer turned slightly. "You're confirming this is the passenger?" "Yes," the attendant said quickly. "She's been difficult." A pause. "Not long, but long enough." Olivia's head tilted just a fraction. "Difficult," she repeated. The word hung there. Thin, fragile, almost a bud. The attendant crossed her arms, defensive now that she was being looked at directly, refusing to follow instructions, holding up the boarding process. "We have other passengers to consider." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Someone shifted. Someone else scoffed quietly. Olivia's eyes didn't leave her. "And what instructions," she asked, "would those be?" The attendant hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. The officer stepped back in, voice harder now, pushing forward to cover the gap. "That's not up for debate. You've been asked to leave. This is your final warning." Final. The word echoed. A man in seat 3B leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on the scene. His phone was already recording now, no hiding it. Olivia could feel it, all of it. The eyes, the tension, the expectation building like pressure in a sealed room. And still, she didn't move. Instead, she folded her hands in her lap. Calm. Controlled. Almost. Patient. "Officer," she said, her tone shifting just slightly, cooler now, sharper. "Before you make a decision you can't undo, I suggest you verify whatever information you've been given." The lead officer laughed, short, dismissive. "I don't need to verify anything," he said. "I've got clear instructions." From who? He didn't answer. Because he didn't know. And somewhere, deep under the surface, that bothered him more than he wanted to admit. "You have 10 seconds, he said instead, stepping closer, voice low enough that it almost sounded like a growl. "After that, we remove you ourselves." 10 seconds. The number hung heavy in the air. No one breathed. Olivia looked at him. Really looked this time, and for just a moment, so brief it could have been imagined, something changed in her eyes. Not fear, not anger. Recognition. As if she had just decided something. "Go ahead," she said softly. The officer blinked. "What, if you're going to make a mistake?" Olivia said. "Don't hesitate." Silence. Absolute. The second officer's hand dropped slightly. His throat moved as he swallowed. The lead officer's face hardened, but there was something else there now. Something underneath the authority. Doubt. And in the stillness of that cabin, with phones recording and strangers watching and judgment hanging thick in the air. No one, not the officers, not the passengers, not the flight attendant standing rigid near the galley, had any idea who they were about to put their hands on. The terminal lights at O'Hare bled into the polished floor like cold reflections of a restless sky. And somewhere beyond the glass, the wind howled against the runway in long, hollow gusts. Olivia Carter had arrived early. She always did. Not because she needed the time, because she preferred to watch. Gate K-15 was a study in controlled chaos. Rolling suitcases rattled over tile. A toddler cried somewhere near the seating area. A businessman paced in tight circles, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and urgent. The departure board flickered once, then steadied, listing delays like quiet disappointments. Olivia sat apart from it all, back straight, ankles crossed, a slim leather tote resting neatly at her feet. Her outfit was simple, a charcoal blazer, perfectly tailored, a soft ivory blouse, dark trousers that fell clean to her shoes, no logos, no flash, nothing that begged to be noticed. But there was something about her, not loud, not obvious, just precise. The kind of presence that didn't need attention because it already understood it. She scrolled through her phone briefly, reviewing a set of numbers, then locked the screen and let it rest in her palm. Her eyes lifted, scanning the gate, not with curiosity, but with quiet assessment. Patterns, behavior, tone, all of it registered. Behind the counter stood Linda Brooks, 48, 20 years in the same uniform. The fabric sat stiff across her shoulders, her posture rigid with a kind of authority that had grown too comfortable over time. Her smile came easily, but only for certain people. "Mr. Donnelly," she called out, voice suddenly warm, almost bright. "Good to see you again." A man in an expensive overcoat stepped forward, barely looking at her, as he handed over his boarding pass. She scanned it quickly, her fingers practiced, efficient. "Right this way, sir. Enjoy your flight." The smile lingered as he walked past. Then it dropped, instantly. Her eyes moved across the waiting area again, sharper now, more selective. A quiet sorting, a judgment made in seconds. Who belonged, who didn't. Olivia watched it happen. She had seen it before. Too many times to count. The boarding announcement crackled overhead, pulling the room into a tighter rhythm. "We are now boarding Horizon Continental Flight 408 to Seattle. First class and Diamond Medallion passengers may now approach." A subtle shift. The energy changed. People stood straighter, adjusted jackets, smoothed hair. Quiet signals of status, of expectation. Olivia rose with them. No rush. No hesitation. She picked up her tote, the leather soft but structured, and stepped into the priority line. Ahead of her, two men laughed too loudly at something that wasn't that funny. A woman in a heavy fur coat checked her reflection in her phone camera, angling it just right. Olivia didn't engage. She waited. When it was her turn, she stepped forward and held out her phone. The scanner beeped. Green. Clear. For a moment, everything aligned exactly as it should. And then Linda's hand shot out, blocking the path. "Hold on!" The word wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Olivia stopped. Not startled, not confused, just aware. "Is there a problem?" she asked. Linda didn't answer immediately. Her eyes moved slowly over Olivia, head to toe, then back again, taking inventory of every detail. Not the clothes themselves, what they suggested, or didn't. "I need you to step aside," Linda said finally, her tone flat now, stripped of the warmth she had used seconds before. Olivia didn't move. "My boarding pass just cleared," she said. "Seat 2A. Linda's lips pressed together, thin. "This line is for first-class passengers," she said. "Group 4 will be called shortly." A small silence opened between them. Not empty. Tense. "I am a first-class passenger," Olivia replied. Simple. Direct. Linda reached forward without asking and took the phone from Olivia's hand. Too fast, too familiar. A violation disguised as procedure. She stared at the screen, her brows tightening as if willing the information to change. It could be a screenshot, she muttered, just loud enough for the people behind Olivia to hear. We've had issues with that before. A man in line shifted, glancing over Olivia's shoulder. The woman in the fur coat leaned slightly, curiosity flickering across her face. Olivia felt it. The attention, the assumption building. She didn't react. "May I have my phone back?" she asked. Linda ignored the request. "I'll need to see a physical ID." Olivia held her gaze for a moment longer, then reached slowly into her bag. No sudden movements. No tension. Just control. She handed over her driver's license. Linda took it, her nails clicking against the plastic as she turned toward her terminal. The keyboard rattled under her fingers, sharp, aggressive taps that echoed louder than necessary. Seconds passed, then more. Her frown deepened. Because the system wasn't agreeing with her, it was confirming. Everything. Name, seat, status. Paid in full. First class. Olivia Carter. Linda's jaw tightened. For a brief moment, something like uncertainty flickered across her face. Then it hardened, replaced by something else. Refusal. She turned back, handing the ID over with a little too much force. "Your bag," she said, pointing at the tote. "It looks oversized. You'll need to place it in the sizer." Olivia glanced down at the bag, then back at Linda. "It fits under the seat," she said. "It meets the requirements." "I'll be the one to decide that," Linda snapped. "Either it goes in the sizer, or you don't board." The line behind Olivia shifted again. A sigh. Someone checking their watch. The subtle pressure of inconvenience. Olivia felt it all. And still, she didn't break eye contact. "Of course," she said. She stepped to the side, lifted the tote, and placed it gently into the metal frame. It slid in. Clean. Effortless. Space on all sides. No argument left to make. For a second, Linda said nothing. Then, fine, the word came out sharp, brittle. She reached for the phone, handing it back with a tight grip. "But you've been selected for additional screening." The lie was immediate, obvious, and deliberate. Olivia knew it. Of course she did. The boarding pass hadn't flagged anything. There was no system alert, no protocol that allowed this kind of decision at a gate agent's discretion. Linda knew it too. But that didn't matter. "Step over to the red mat," she said, already turning away as if the decision was final. Olivia stood there for a moment. The noise of the terminal seemed to dim, like the world had pulled back just slightly to watch what she would do next. She could stop this, right here. One request, one call, one demand for a supervisor. It would end. Quickly. Cleanly. But Olivia didn't move. Instead, something colder settled into place. A decision. "Of course," she said again. She stepped onto the red mat, and as Linda began a slow, unnecessary inspection of her belongings, unzipping, unfolding, examining things that needed no examination, Olivia Carter stood perfectly still, watching, listening, measuring. Because this, all of this, was no longer just about a seat. The inspection took longer than it should have. That was the point. Linda didn't rush. She unfolded each item with exaggerated care, fingers lingering where they didn't need to, pausing just long enough to make sure everyone in line could see. A notebook. Opened. Flipped through. Closed. A slim laptop. Removed. Turned over. Examined like it might reveal something hidden if she stared hard enough. Olivia stood motionless, hands at her sides, shoulders relaxed, breathing even. But her eyes tracked everything. The rhythm of Linda's movements, the way her lips tightened when nothing incriminating appeared, the faint irritation building beneath the surface. Behind them, the line had stalled. A man in a grey suit leaned out slightly, voice edged with annoyance. "Is this going to take much longer?" Linda didn't look up. "Security procedures take the time they take, sir." It wasn't an answer. It was a warning. The man leaned back, muttering under his breath. But he didn't push further. No one did. Because authority, even when misused, had a way of silencing people. Olivia knew that too. She let her gaze drift past Linda, toward the terminal. People were watching now, openly. Some curious, some uncomfortable, some already forming conclusions they hadn't earned. A woman near the seating area shook her head slightly, whispering to the person beside her. A teenager angled his phone discreetly, trying not to be obvious. And then there were the ones who looked away, the ones who didn't want to see. Olivia's jaw tightened just slightly. Not anger. Recognition. She had seen this before. Different place, different faces, same pattern. Linda zipped the bag closed with a sharp pull, louder than necessary, and shoved it back toward Olivia. "You can go," she said, already turning her attention to the next passenger. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just dismissal. Olivia picked up the tote. For a brief second, her fingers paused on the handle. Then she stepped forward, past the scanner, down the narrow entrance to the jet bridge. The noise of the terminal faded behind her, replaced by the hollow echo of footsteps against metal walls. The air was colder here, sharper, carrying the faint scent of fuel and recycled air. Each step was measured, controlled. But something had shifted. Not visible. Not yet. At the aircraft door, a woman stood waiting. Sarah Mitchell, 45, impeccable uniform, hair pulled tight, smile practiced to perfection. "Welcome aboard," she said to the passenger ahead of Olivia, her voice smooth, warm. Then Olivia stepped forward. The smile vanished. Not gradually. Instantly. Boarding pass. The word dropped flat. Olivia held out her phone without a word. Sarah took a quick glance, her eyes narrowing just slightly before she handed it back. Seat 2A. Straight ahead. Left side. No offer to assist with the bag. No mention of amenities. No warmth. Just instruction. Olivia nodded once and moved past her. The first-class cabin opened up in front of her. Soft lighting, wide seats, clean lines of grey and navy. A controlled space designed to feel exclusive quiet, separate from everything else. A sanctuary. Or at least, that's what it was supposed to be. Olivia reached her seat. 2A. She placed her tote beneath the ottoman, sliding it in with ease, then lowered herself into the seat. The leather adjusted under her weight, smooth and supportive. For a moment, She closed her eyes. Just a moment. The low hum of the aircraft filled the space, steady, mechanical, grounding. Then she opened them again. Her hand reached for her laptop. She flipped it open, the screen lighting her face in a soft glow. Numbers filled the display, columns, projections, details most people wouldn't even understand. But her focus wasn't fully there. Not anymore. Because behind her, something was moving. The sound of heels against the aisle. Quick, intentional. Linda. She had left her post. That alone was enough to matter. Olivia didn't turn. She didn't need to. The voices carried, low at first, then sharper as they reached the galley just ahead. "I'm telling you, something's off," Linda hissed, her tone urgent now. Stripped of its earlier control, she gave me attitude at the gate. Sarah crossed her arms, leaning slightly against the counter. "What kind of attitude? The kind where she thinks she belongs here," Linda said, the words edged with something bitter. "But I've been doing this long enough to know when something doesn't add up." Olivia's fingers stilled on the keyboard, just for a second, then continued. Calm. Measured. She cleared the system, Sarah said, though there was doubt in her voice now. "If the ticket went through, people game the system all the time," Linda cut in. "Stolen cards, mileage tricks. You know how it works." A pause. Sarah glanced down the aisle, her gaze flickering briefly toward seat 2A, toward Olivia, then back. "She doesn't look like a problem," Sarah said quietly. Linda let out a short, humorless laugh. "That's exactly the point." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. "I've got a platinum member in row 12, Linda continued, lowering her voice even further. "He's furious he didn't get upgraded. Been flying with us for years." Sarah's lips pressed together. She knew where this was going. "Don't," she said. "But it wasn't firm. Not enough." "We can fix it," Linda said. "Say there's a system glitch, double booking, happens all the time." "It doesn't happen like that," Sarah replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "It happens if we say it does." Another pause, longer this time. Sarah looked down the aisle again, at Olivia, at the way she sat, still, composed, focused, and something about that unsettled her. But not enough. "What if she pushes back?" Sarah asked. Linda's smile was thin. "Then we escalate." The word hung there, sharp, final. Sarah exhaled slowly, then straightened. Decision made. "All right," she said. "Let's handle it." They stepped out of the galley together, two figures moving with purpose, down the aisle toward seat 2A. Olivia didn't look up immediately. She finished typing the line she had started. One last number. One last adjustment. Then she closed the laptop. Soft click. Her hand rested on top of it. Waiting. The footsteps stopped beside her. Miss Carter. Not a question. A summons. Olivia looked up. Slowly. Her eyes moved from Sarah to Linda, then back again. "Yes?" Sarah forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "There's been an issue with your reservation." Olivia said nothing, just watched. Linda stepped forward, voice smooth now, almost sympathetic. It appears your upgrade wasn't processed correctly. This seat actually belongs to another passenger. A beat. The cabin seemed to lean in again, listening, measuring. Olivia tilted her head slightly. I didn't use an upgrade, she said. I purchased this seat. Sarah's smile tightened. Sometimes the system reflects things differently, she said. We've assigned you a new seat in row 34. A pause, then a middle seat. The words landed like a quiet impact. Something shifted in the air, subtle, but undeniable. Olivia's gaze didn't waver. You're asking me to move? She said slowly, from a confirmed first-class seat to the back of the aircraft. It's standard procedure, Linda replied quickly. No, Olivia said. Just that. One word. But it stopped everything. I'm not moving. Silence fell again. Heavier this time. Because now, the line had been drawn. The word no didn't echo. It settled. Heavy. Final. Unmovable. For a fraction of a second, neither Sarah nor Linda spoke. The cabin seemed to hold its breath, the low hum of the aircraft suddenly louder, sharper, like static under tension. Linda recovered first. Her lips curved, but there was no warmth in it. Just irritation wrapped in something that tried to look like professionalism. Ma'am, she said, voice tightening. This isn't optional. Olivia didn't blink. I'm aware of what optional means, she replied. Calm, even, controlled. It wasn't defiance for the sake of defiance. It was something else, something heavier, something grounded in certainty. Sarah stepped in, her tone shifting, less polite now, more procedural. You're holding up the boarding process, she said. We have a full cabin. Other passengers are waiting. We need to resolve this quickly. Resolve. The word suggested balance, fairness. There was none of that here. Olivia's gaze moved past them, just briefly, scanning the cabin. People were watching openly now. No more pretending. A man across the aisle leaned back slightly, eyebrows raised, clearly entertained. A woman in the front row whispered something behind her hand, eyes flicking between Olivia and the two employees. The young man in seat 3B hadn't lowered his phone once. Recording, capturing every second. Olivia saw it, and she didn't mind. Her attention returned to Sarah. You created the issue, she said. You resolve it. Linda let out a short breath through her nose, a sound that bordered on a scoff. This is exactly what I was talking about, she muttered, just loud enough. Sarah's posture stiffened. The patience was slipping now, replaced by something sharper. Miss Carter, she said, her voice lowering. If you refuse to comply with crew instructions, we will have no choice but to escalate this situation. There it was again. Escalate. A word designed to sound official, necessary, but underneath it, a threat. Olivia leaned back slightly in her seat, one arm resting along the armrest, fingers relaxed. You've already escalated it, she said. A pause. Linda's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Olivia held her gaze. You fabricated a system error, she said. You attempted to reassign a confirmed seat. Now you're attempting to force a downgrade without cause. Each word landed with precision. Not louder, just sharper. Linda's face flushed, a faint red rising along her cheekbones. "That's not what's happening," she snapped. "No?" Olivia asked. The single word was enough to make the space between them feel smaller, tighter. Sarah stepped forward again, her tone hardening. "We're not going to argue about this," she said. "You either move voluntarily, or we involve airport security." There it was. The line crossed. Clear. Direct. Olivia's eyes flickered, just once. Not in fear, in recognition. Because now the situation had moved beyond inconvenience, beyond arrogance. Now it was something else entirely. "You're willing to remove a ticketed passenger," Olivia said slowly, "based on a claim you cannot verify." Sarah didn't answer immediately. Because she couldn't, not truthfully. "It's not about verification," Linda cut in. "It's about maintaining order on this aircraft." Order. The word hung there, distorted. Because everyone in that cabin could feel it now. This wasn't about order. It was about control. Olivia's fingers tapped once, lightly against the armrest. A small sound. But in the silence, it carried. "Then call them," she said. Linda blinked. "What?" "Call security," Olivia repeated. A beat. No one moved, because that wasn't the response they expected. Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly, studying her now. "You're serious?" she said. "I've been serious since the gate," Olivia replied. The words were quiet, but they carried weight. The young man in seat 3B shifted, leaning forward just slightly, his phone steady in his hand. The camera caught everything. The tension in Sarah's jaw, the tightness in Linda's posture, the stillness of Olivia, sitting perfectly composed in the center of it all. Linda glanced at Sarah. A silent exchange. Unspoken, but clear. This had gone further than planned, but not far enough to stop. "Fine," Linda said finally, reaching for her radio. "We'll do it your way." She pressed the button, her voice snapping into a rehearsed authority. "Gate K15 to ground security. We have a non-compliant passenger in the forward cabin, refusing crew instructions. Request immediate assistance." The words were clean, efficient, and completely misleading. Olivia listened. Every word, every omission. Sarah shifted her weight, folding her arms now, her earlier composure replaced by something colder. "This didn't have to happen," she said. Olivia looked at her. "No," she agreed. "It didn't." A silence followed. Different this time. Not tense. Inevitable. The kind of silence that comes when something has already been set in motion and can't be undone. A few rows back, someone whispered, "This is going to get it ugly." Another voice, quieter. "She should have just moved." Olivia heard both. She didn't respond, because this was no longer about what she should have done. It was about what they had chosen to do. Time stretched. Seconds dragging into something heavier. Then footsteps, loud, firm, echoing through the jet bridge before they even appeared. The sound alone shifted the energy in the cabin. Heads turned, phones lifted higher. The two officers from earlier stepped into view again, filling the aisle with their presence. Behind them, a third figure. Bigger, broader. Moving with the kind of confidence that came from never being challenged. David Collins, 50 years old, thick neck, shoulders that strained slightly against his uniform. His expression was set in something that looked like authority, but felt closer to impatience. He didn't look at anyone else, just Olivia. From the moment he stepped on the plane, his focus locked. Target acquired. Linda stepped forward immediately, her voice shifting again, softer now, almost urgent. "She's been refusing instructions," she said, "creating a disturbance. We need her removed." David didn't respond right away. He walked down the aisle instead. Slow, measured, each step deliberate. Passengers pulled back slightly as he passed, instinctively making space. Power didn't need to announce itself. It just moved. He stopped in front of seat 2A. Looked down at Olivia. She didn't look up immediately. Just for a moment. Just enough to remind him. He wasn't in control yet. Then she lifted her gaze and met his. "What seems to be the problem?" she asked. David's lips pressed into a thin line. "Grab your bag," he said. "You're getting off this plane." No introduction. No explanation. Just a command. Olivia held his gaze. And on what grounds? David didn't hesitate. Failure to comply with crew instructions, interfering with operations, creating a disturbance. The words came out fast. Practiced, before, many times. Olivia listened, then nodded slightly, as if confirming something to herself. "I see," she said. David leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "We can do this the easy way," he said, "or the hard way." There it was again, the pattern repeating. Different face. Same script. Olivia sat back in her seat, hands resting lightly in her lap. Completely still. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. The words landed. Harder this time. Because now they carried consequences. David's jaw tightened. His patience, already thin, snapped. 10 seconds, he said. The number dropped into the cabin like a countdown. And this time, everyone knew. Something was about to break. No one counted out loud, but everyone felt it. 10 seconds. It stretched longer than it should have. Each second dragging, heavy, pressing into the silence like weight against glass. David Collins didn't move. He stood over her, broad shoulders blocking the aisle, one hand resting near his belt, the other hanging loose but ready. His eyes stayed locked on Olivia, waiting for something. Fear, hesitation, compliance. He got none. Olivia didn't even look at the clock. She didn't need to. Her breathing stayed even, slow, controlled, her posture unchanged, as if the threat hanging over her wasn't real, or worse, wasn't important. That was what unsettled him. Not resistance, not argument. Stillness. 8, he said, voice low now, more to himself than to her. A few passengers shifted. Someone exhaled sharply. The young man in seat 3B adjusted his grip on his phone, zooming in slightly, his hand trembling just enough to blur the frame for a second before he steadied it. Sarah stood off to the side, arms crossed tight, her fingers digging into her sleeves. Linda hovered just behind her, eyes sharp, almost eager, like she was waiting for a conclusion she had already decided. 7. David took a step closer. Too close. He leaned in, invading her space, forcing the moment. "You think this is a game?" he muttered. Olivia looked up at him, not flinching, not retreating, just looking. "I think," she said quietly, "you're about to make a very expensive mistake." The words didn't raise in volume. They didn't need to. They cut clean. David's expression flickered, just for a fraction of a second, then hardened. "I've heard that before," he said. "No," Olivia replied, her voice steady, unwavering. "You haven't?" A beat. Something passed between them. Not visible, but real. Behind them, a man in the front row leaned toward his companion, whispering, "She's not scared." The woman beside him shook her head slowly, eyes fixed on Olivia. "No, she's not." David straightened, his patience gone now, replaced by something sharper, more aggressive. 3, he said. He didn't bother counting the middle numbers. Didn't care. This wasn't about procedure anymore. It was about control. "Officers," he snapped, without taking his eyes off Olivia. "Go ahead." The 2 junior officers moved. Not fast, not rough, but with intent. Hands reaching forward, one toward her arm, the other toward her shoulder. And that's when it happened. "Don't." The word stopped them mid-motion, not because it was loud, because of how it landed. Cold. Absolute. Final. Both officers froze. Literally froze. Their hands hovered inches from her, suspended in the air, as if something invisible had locked them in place. The entire cabin felt it. That shift. That moment. Even David hesitated. Just for a second. Because something about the way she said it didn't sound like a passenger. It didn't sound like fear. It sounded like authority. "Are you resisting?" David demanded, pushing forward, trying to reclaim control. Olivia didn't raise her voice. "I am refusing an unlawful order," she said. The words were precise, deliberate, chosen carefully. And suddenly, the air changed. Because now, this wasn't just a scene. It was something else. Something official. David's eyes narrowed. "You don't get to decide what's lawful here," he said. "Actually," Olivia replied, "I do." Silence. Not the kind that fades. The kind that builds. Heavy. Uncomfortable. She shifted slightly in her seat. Not to stand. Not to move away. Just enough to settle deeper, more firmly. "As per your own operating procedures," she continued, her voice calm but carrying, "ground security does not have the authority to remove a ticketed, non-violent passenger from an aircraft without authorization from the pilot in command." The words landed one after another. Measured. Exact. David blinked. Once. Twice. Because that wasn't how this usually went. Passengers argued. They panicked. They pleaded. They didn't quote policy. They didn't sound like that. Behind him, one of the junior officers shifted his weight, glancing sideways, uncertainty creeping in. "Where did you hear that?" David asked, his tone tightening. Olivia's eyes didn't leave his. "I didn't hear it," she said. "I know it." A pause. Longer this time. Because now, there was doubt. Not in the cabin. In him. He felt it. And he hated it. "You're stalling," he said, more forcefully than before, trying to push past the crack forming in his confidence. "No," Olivia said. "I'm giving you a chance." Another beat. The young man in seat 3B leaned even closer into the aisle, whispering under his breath. Oh my God. His phone caught everything. The hesitation, the shift, the subtle unraveling of authority. David's jaw tightened. His pride flared. And pride was louder than logic. "Fine," he snapped. He turned abruptly, motioning toward the cockpit. "You want the captain?" he said. "I'll get the captain." His boots hit the aisle hard as he walked away, faster now, sharper, like he needed movement to regain control. The two junior officers stepped back immediately, hands lowering, tension still visible in their posture. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them moved closer again. Because something had changed. They felt it too. Sarah's face had gone pale. Not completely. Just enough. Her arms loosened slightly, her confidence slipping at the edges. Linda, however, still stood rigid, still convinced. "She's bluffing," she whispered, just loud enough for Sarah to hear. But her voice wasn't as steady as before. Sarah didn't respond, because she wasn't sure anymore. Olivia sat there, unmoved, untouched, untaken. Her hands rested in her lap again, fingers lightly interlaced. Calm, as if the storm that had just passed through the cabin hadn't reached her at all. But inside, something was sharpening, the kind of focus that came not from anger, but from certainty, because now they had crossed a line they didn't understand, and somewhere ahead, a door was about to open, and everything was about to change. The cockpit door closed behind David Collins with a heavy, sealed thud. Inside, the noise of the cabin disappeared, replaced by something quieter, more controlled. Captain Michael Turner sat forward in his seat, headset slightly tilted, eyes scanning a checklist on the display in front of him. His movements were precise, practiced, every switch flipped with intention, every line read with discipline. Beside him, the first officer adjusted a dial, glancing briefly at the clock. They were already behind schedule. David didn't wait. "Captain," he said, stepping in too fast, too close. "I need your authorization for a passenger removal." Michael didn't look up immediately. "What's the issue?" he asked, voice steady, eyes still on the screen. "Non-compliant passenger in first class," David replied. "Refusing crew instructions, causing a disturbance. Gate agent and lead flight attendant both want her off." Michael exhaled slowly. Passenger removals, paperwork, delays, reports. Always messy. Did she threaten anyone? He asked. David hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. Then, she's being hostile. Michael's eyes flicked up. That word again. Hostile. It got used a lot. Too much. What exactly did she do? He asked. David shifted his weight. She refused to move from her seat, he said. There's an issue with her ticket. Crew tried to resolve it. She pushed back. Now she's quoting policy, holding up boarding. Michael leaned back slightly. Quoting policy, he repeated. David scoffed. Yeah. Trying to sound like she knows what she's talking about. Another pause. Longer this time. Michael reached for the clipboard David had brought in, flipping it open. The form was already filled out, mostly. The handwriting rushed. Impatient. Passenger removal authorization. Name. Olivia Carter. The pen in Michael's hand stopped. Just stopped. He read it again. Slowly. Olivia Carter. Something in his posture changed. Subtle, but immediate. What did you say her name was? He asked. David frowned. Carter. Olivia Carter. Seat 2. Michael didn't respond, because in that moment, a memory surfaced. Not vague, not distant, clear, sharp. 2 hours earlier, a briefing, confidential, short, direct, unusual. He turned his head slowly toward the secured terminal mounted beside him. His fingers moved across the screen, pulling up a restricted file. The system responded instantly, unlocking a page that most of the crew would never even know existed. VIP override. He stared at it. Then at the seat assignment. 2A. Then at the name. Olivia Carter. Title. Chief Executive Officer. Majority shareholder. Horizon Continental Holdings. Status. Covert operational audit. Michael felt the blood drain from his face. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't sudden. It was quiet, like something inside him had just dropped. He looked back at David. Really looked this time. And for the first time since the man had entered the cockpit, Michael saw him clearly. The posture, the impatience, the assumption, the complete absence of due diligence. David, Michael said slowly. But his voice had changed. Lower now. Tighter. Do you have any idea what you're doing? David blinked. Thrown off. What? Michael stood up. The movement was quick. Controlled. But there was something underneath it now. Something urgent. I'm asking you, Michael said, stepping closer. Do you have any idea who you're trying to remove from my aircraft? David frowned, irritation flaring again. Captain, with all due respect, I don't care who she is. She's non-compliant. That's enough. Michael let out a sharp breath. Not a laugh. Not quite anger. Something colder. You should care, he said. David shook his head. This is exactly the problem. People think status puts them above the rules. It doesn't. Not on my watch. Michael stared at him. For a second. Then he reached out, grabbed the tablet from its mount, and turned it toward David. Read. David hesitated, then leaned in. His eyes scanned the screen. First the name, then the title, then the rest, and for a moment, nothing happened. No reaction. Just confusion. Because his brain didn't process it. Not immediately. But then, it hit. Like a delayed impact. His expression shifted. Not gradually. Instantly. The color drained from his face, leaving something pale, almost gray beneath the fluorescent cockpit lighting. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No words came out. "That's not," he started. Michael didn't let him finish. "She took over the company 6 months ago," he said, voice low, sharp, controlled. "She's been conducting covert audits across the entire network, unannounced, unfiltered, looking for exactly this kind of behavior." David stepped back, a small step. But enough. His confidence cracked. Visibly. "I didn't know," he said. The words sounded thin, weak. "I didn't know," he repeated, louder this time, like saying it again might fix something. Michael shook his head. "I don't care what you knew," he said. "I care about what you did." The clipboard slipped slightly in David's hand. His grip loosened. "She's been sitting out there," Michael continued, "letting you, the gate agent, and the lead flight attendant show her exactly how this operation really works." Each word landed heavier than the last. "And you didn't question it," he added. "You didn't verify, you didn't check, you just acted." David swallowed hard. The sound was audible. Because the cockpit was silent. Too silent. "I was following protocol," he said, but even he didn't believe it. Michael's eyes hardened. "No," he said, "you weren't." A pause. Then, "You were following bias." The word cut deeper than anything else. David flinched, just slightly, but it was there. Michael stepped past him, moving toward the cockpit door. "We're done here," he said. David turned quickly. "Captain," Michael stopped, looked back, and whatever David saw in his face, it shut him down completely. "If you touch her," Michael said, voice low, controlled, but carrying something unmistakable, "you won't just lose your job. A beat. You'll lose everything." Silence. David didn't move, didn't speak. Couldn't, because for the first time since he stepped onto that aircraft, he understood. Michael turned, opened the cockpit door, and stepped back into the cabin, where everything was still waiting, but not for long. The cockpit door opened with a sharp, mechanical click. Every head in first class turned at once. Captain Michael Turner stepped out. Not rushed, not hesitant, but different. Something in his posture had changed. His shoulders squared tighter, his jaw set harder, his eyes focused, deliberate, carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. Behind him, David Collins followed. But not the same man who had walked in. His steps were slower now, less certain, his face pale, the confidence that had filled the aisle minutes ago. Gone. The two junior officers looked at him immediately, waiting for direction. He didn't give any. He couldn't. Michael didn't stop in the galley. He didn't look at Sarah. Didn't acknowledge Linda. He walked straight down the aisle. The sound of his shoes against the carpet was soft, but in the silence it carried. Row 1, then row 2. Then he stopped. Right beside seat 2A, Olivia Carter hadn't moved. Not an inch. She sat exactly as she had before. Calm, composed, her hands resting lightly in her lap, her gaze steady, watching him approach. The young man in seat 3B leaned so far into the aisle he nearly lost his balance. His phone was still recording, capturing every detail, the captain, the tension, the shift that no one could yet explain. Michael swallowed once, then straightened, and in a motion no one in that cabin had expected, he brought his hand up, a clean, precise salute. "Ma'am," he said. The word landed like a crack through glass. "I'm Captain Michael Turner." His voice was clear, controlled, but beneath it, something else. Respect, not casual, not polite, formal, absolute. "On behalf of the flight deck," he continued, "I would like to personally welcome you aboard your aircraft." Silence. Not the tense kind from before. This was different. This was shock, the kind that emptied a room. A woman in the front row gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. The man beside her blinked rapidly, as if trying to reset what he had just heard. The phone in seat 3B shook. Just slightly. But enough. Behind them, something dropped. A soft plastic thud. Sarah Mitchell. The bag she had been holding slipped from her hands, hitting the galley floor with a dull sound that echoed louder than it should have. Linda didn't move. Couldn't. Her face had gone completely still, the color draining so fast it looked unnatural. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the partition, knuckles whitening as she tried to hold herself upright. Because now, they understood. Or at least, they were starting to. Olivia looked up at Michael. For the first time since this began, her expression shifted. Not dramatically, not emotionally, but subtly. Recognition. "Thank you, Captain," she said. Her voice was smooth, controlled. But it carried something heavier now. Authority. "I appreciate your professionalism," she added. A pause. "Then it appears you are one of the few who reviewed the briefing." The words weren't loud, but they landed hard. Michael inclined his head slightly. "Yes, ma'am." Behind him, David Collins stood frozen. The man who had filled the aisle just minutes ago with threats and deadlines now looked smaller. Not physically, but something inside him had collapsed. The two junior officers stepped back instinctively, creating space between themselves and Olivia without being told. No orders, no commands, just instinct. Because now, the hierarchy had changed. Completely. Olivia reached down and unbuckled her seatbelt. The soft click echoed, and in that moment, the entire cabin seemed to lean forward, watching, waiting. She stood, slowly, deliberately. The charcoal blazer fell into place around her shoulders, sharp lines, clean edges. What had looked understated before now felt different, structured, intentional, armor. She stepped into the aisle, and the space parted for her. No one told it to. It just did. Her gaze moved first to the two junior officers. They stepped back immediately. One full step, then another. Eyes wide, breathing shallow. They didn't say a word. They didn't need to. Olivia turned toward David. He didn't look up. Not at first. His eyes were fixed somewhere near the floor, his chest rising and falling too quickly, his hands slightly clenched at his sides, as if he didn't know what to do with them. "Mr. Collins," Olivia said. Her tone was calm, but it carried. Everywhere. He forced himself to look up, and when their eyes met, he broke. Not visibly, not completely, but enough. "Yes, ma'am," he said. The word caught slightly in his throat. Olivia took a step closer. Just one. But it closed the distance completely. "You gave me 10 seconds, she said. Her voice didn't rise, didn't sharpen, but each word hit with precision. "I believe your exact words were—" She paused, just long enough for the memory to settle into the air around them. "We can do this the easy way, or the hard way." David swallowed. "Hard. I was acting on the information provided to me," he said quickly, the words tumbling out now, unsteady. "The gate agent informed me that—" "You are the head of terminal security," Olivia cut in. The interruption wasn't loud, but it was absolute. "You assess threats," she continued. "You verify information. You do not execute assumptions." A beat. David's mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. "You failed to verify my ticket," Olivia said. "You failed to request identification. You failed to follow your own de-escalation protocols." Each statement landed like a verdict. Final. Unarguable. "You threatened a compliant passenger with physical force and unlawful detention." The cabin felt smaller, tighter, as if the walls themselves were closing in around the words. David's shoulders dropped, just slightly, but enough, because he knew there was no way out of this. "You are a liability," Olivia said. The word hung in the air. Cold, unforgiving. "To this company," she added. A pause. "And to every passenger who relies on your judgment." Silence. Heavy. Complete. Then, effective immediately, Olivia said, "You are relieved of your duties." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They settled. Permanent. "Hand your badge to the captain." David didn't move. Not right away. His hands trembled. Barely. But enough. Slowly, like his body had forgotten how to function, he reached down, unclipped the badge from his belt. Held it for a second, staring at it, as if trying to understand how it had come to this. Then he handed it over. Michael took it, without a word, without hesitation. And just like that, the power David had walked onto that plane with was gone. No one spoke. Not after that. The silence in the cabin was no longer tense. It was absolute. Like judgment had already been passed, and now the room was just waiting for the rest of the sentence to be finished. Olivia didn't look at David again. Not because she was done. Because he no longer mattered. Her attention shifted. Forward, towards the galley, where Sarah Mitchell and Linda Carter stood frozen, side by side, like two figures caught in a photograph they couldn't step out of. "Ms. Mitchell." Olivia's voice cut clean through the space. Sarah flinched. Actually flinched. Her shoulders jerked, her breath catching sharply as if the sound of her name had physically struck her. "Yes, yes, ma'am," she stammered, stepping forward too quickly, nearly tripping over the edge of the galley mat before catching herself. Her hands moved instinctively, smoothing down her uniform, trying to recover something. Dignity, control, anything. I didn't realize," she began. Olivia raised her hand. Not high, not aggressively. Just enough. And Sarah stopped talking immediately. "I'm not interested in what you realized," Olivia said. Her tone remained even, but colder now. Sharper. "I'm interested in what you did." The words hung. Heavy. Sarah's lips parted, but no sound came out. Because she knew. There was no explanation that could survive what had already been exposed. "You stopped a fully ticketed first-class passenger at the gate," Olivia continued. "You took personal property from her hand without consent. You fabricated a secondary screening. Each point landed like a strike. Precise, documented, unavoidable." I was just following standard procedure," Sarah said weakly, her voice trembling, the confidence she had worn earlier now completely gone. Olivia tilted her head slightly. "Standard procedure?" she repeated. A pause. Then, "At what point does standard procedure include inventing violations that don't exist?" Sarah's face crumpled. Not dramatically, but enough. Her composure fractured, cracks spreading fast. I thought something wasn't right," she said, her voice barely holding together. "I was trying to protect." "Protect what?" Olivia asked. The question came fast, sharp, unforgiving. "The integrity of the cabin," she added, finishing the thought for her. Sarah nodded quickly, desperate. Yes, exactly. That's all I was trying to do." Olivia's gaze didn't soften, not even slightly. "No," she said. "Just that." One word, and it erased everything Sarah had just said. "You weren't protecting anything," Olivia continued. "You were profiling." The word landed harder than any accusation before it. Because it wasn't emotional, it was factual. "I saw how you looked at me," Olivia said. "You didn't see a ticket. You didn't see a passenger. You saw someone who didn't fit your idea of who belongs in that seat." Sarah's breath hitched. Her eyes filled. But Olivia didn't stop. "You decided I didn't belong," she said. "And then you built a case to justify that decision. A beat. And when your case failed," her eyes flicked briefly toward Linda, "you escalated." Linda stiffened. Her turn. "Ms. Carter," Olivia said, her voice shifting just slightly, enough to signal the focus had moved. Linda stepped forward automatically, but her confidence gone. Completely. Her chin, which had been lifted high earlier, now dipped just enough to betray the panic beneath it. "I was acting on the information provided," she said quickly, the words rehearsed even as she spoke them. "The gate agent informed me there was an issue with the reservation. I trusted that." Olivia watched her, unblinking. "You're the lead flight attendant," she said. "You are responsible for the safety and well-being of every passenger on this aircraft." Linda nodded, too fast. "Yes, and that's exactly what I was doing. You attempted to remove a passenger from a confirmed seat without verifying the claim. Olivia cut in. Linda stopped, mid-sentence. You labeled a calm, compliant passenger as aggressive, Olivia continued. You called security instead of resolving the situation. Each word stripped something away, layer by layer, until there was nothing left to hide behind. I was just trying to follow protocol, Linda said, her voice cracking now, the edges of panic bleeding through. Olivia took a step closer. Not aggressive, but deliberate. Protocol does not replace judgment, she said. The words were quiet, but they carried. You don't get to hide behind it when it's convenient. Linda's eyes dropped. She couldn't hold Olivia's gaze anymore. No one could. Because this wasn't an argument. This was exposure, complete, unfiltered. Olivia let the silence sit for a moment, long enough for every passenger in that cabin to feel it. Then she turned slightly, addressing the space, the room. Everyone. What happened here today, she said, her voice carrying effortlessly now, filling the cabin without rising, is not a misunderstanding. A pause. It is a failure. The word landed heavy. Systemic, not personal. Bigger than any one person. It is the result of unchecked bias, she continued, of authority used without accountability, of a culture that allows assumptions to override facts. The young man in seat 3B lowered his phone just slightly, not to stop recording, but because even he felt it now. This wasn't just a moment. It was something larger. Olivia turned back. To Sarah, to Linda. Both of you made decisions today that violated company policy, federal regulations, and basic human decency, she said. No anger, no raised voice. Just truth. Clear. Unavoidable. And you did it with confidence. A beat. That's what makes it dangerous. Sarah's tears fell freely now. Linda stood rigid, but her hands trembled at her sides. Neither of them spoke. They couldn't, because there was nothing left to say. Olivia's gaze hardened, just slightly. Effective immediately, she said. You are both relieved of your duties. The word settled. Final. You will gather your belongings and exit this aircraft. No hesitation, no delay. Sarah let out a small, broken sound. Linda closed her eyes for a brief second, as if bracing for impact, because this was impact. Real. Permanent. Captain Turner stepped forward slightly, not speaking, just present. Authority, backing authority. And in that moment, everyone in that cabin understood something they hadn't before. Power didn't come from uniforms, or titles, or raised voices. It came from certainty, from truth, from knowing exactly who you are, and refusing to let anyone rewrite it. Olivia Carter stood in the aisle, calm, unshaken, and completely in control. No one moved at first. Not Sarah, not Linda, not even David. It was as if their bodies needed permission, their minds hadn't yet processed. Then reality caught up. Fast, sharp, unforgiving. Sarah was the first to break. Her knees weakened slightly, forcing her to grab the edge of the galley counter to steady herself. Her fingers curled around the metal, knuckles pale, her breathing uneven, shallow. I have 20 years with this company, she said, her voice cracking under the weight of everything collapsing at once. Please, there has to be some kind of misunderstanding. Olivia didn't respond immediately. She watched her, not with anger, not with cruelty, but with something colder. Finality. There is no misunderstanding, Olivia said. The words were quiet, but absolute. You didn't make a mistake, she continued. You made a decision. Sarah shook her head quickly, tears spilling over now, her composure completely gone. I didn't know who you were, she said, desperation creeping into every syllable. If I had known. That's the problem, Olivia cut in. A beat. You shouldn't have needed to. Silence. Because that was the truth that hit hardest. Not her title, not her position, but the fact that it shouldn't have mattered. You treated me differently because you thought you could, Olivia said. Because in your mind, I didn't have the authority to challenge you. Sarah's lips trembled. Her grip tightened. But she didn't argue. She couldn't, because every word was right. Olivia turned to Linda. Linda hadn't cried, not yet. But her face had gone hollow, the sharp edges of her earlier confidence completely erased, leaving something fragile underneath. I was following her lead, Linda said quickly, before Olivia could speak. She told me there was an issue. I trusted that. That's how the system works. Olivia studied her, quietly. And when the system is wrong? She asked. Linda hesitated. Just long enough. You question it, Olivia answered for her. A pause. But you didn't. Linda's jaw tightened. I had a responsibility to maintain order on this aircraft, she said, trying to hold on to something, authority, logic, anything. And you failed, Olivia said. Flat, direct, no room for interpretation. Linda flinched. It was small, but visible. You escalated a situation that didn't exist, Olivia continued. You labeled a calm passenger as a threat. You used security as a tool instead of a last resort. Each sentence stripped another layer away, until nothing remained. I have a pension, Linda said, her voice breaking for the first time, the reality finally catching up. I'm 3 years from retirement. Please, this will destroy everything. Olivia didn't soften, not even slightly. You should have thought about that, she said, before you decided to destroy someone else's dignity. The words landed harder than anything before, because they weren't loud. They were true, and truth didn't need volume. Linda looked down, her shoulders sagged. The fight left her completely. David stood off to the side, silent, watching. His badge gone, his authority stripped. And now, watching the rest fall. Olivia stepped back slightly, giving space. Not out of kindness, out of closure. This isn't about punishment, she said. The statement hung in the air, unexpected. This is about accountability. She let that settle, long enough for it to mean something. For years, behavior like this has been tolerated, she continued, excused, ignored, buried under reports that never went anywhere. Captain Turner shifted slightly behind her. He knew. He had seen it. The complaints, the patterns, the silence. "It ends now," Olivia said, and there was something in her voice, not just authority, not just control, but intention, a decision bigger than this moment, bigger than this plane, bigger than these 3 people standing in front of her. She turned to Captain Turner. "I want replacement crew dispatched immediately," she said. "This aircraft does not leave the gate until that happens." "Yes, ma'am," he replied without hesitation. No pause, no question, just action. Olivia nodded once, then looked back at the 3 of them. "You will leave this aircraft," she said. "Not a request, not a suggestion, a conclusion." Sarah pushed herself off the counter slowly, her legs unsteady. She reached for her bag with trembling hands, her movements automatic now, like her body was going through motions her mind hadn't accepted yet. Linda followed, slower, more rigid, each step heavy, measured. David moved last. He didn't look at anyone, not Olivia, not the crew, not the passengers, because there was nothing left to look at. The aisle opened for them, silently. Passengers pulled their legs in, shifting just enough to create space, their eyes following every movement. No one spoke. No one needed to, because what had just happened didn't need commentary. It needed witness. The young man in seat 3B kept recording, his hands steadier now, because he knew this was something people would need to see. The 3 of them walked toward the front of the plane, not escorted, not forced, but removed all the same. Each step down the aisle stripped away what remained of their authority, their presence shrinking with every row they passed. By the time they reached the galley, they were no longer in control of anything. Sarah stepped onto the jet bridge first, then Linda, then David, and just like that, they were gone. The cabin door remained open, cold air drifting in from outside, mixing with the stillness inside. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Then a sound. Soft at first, a single clap. From seat 3B, the young man. Then another. From row 1, then another and another, until the entire cabin broke. Applause filled the space. Not loud, not chaotic, but steady, deliberate, a release, a recognition of what they had just witnessed. Olivia didn't smile. She didn't bow. She didn't acknowledge it beyond a slight nod. Because this wasn't about approval. It was about principle. She turned, walked back to her seat, sat down, calm, composed, as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. Her laptop opened. The screen lit her face in a soft glow. And just like that, she went back to work. But the air in the cabin had changed completely, because everyone there knew they hadn't just watched a confrontation. They had watched a system break, and something stronger take its place. The cabin didn't return to normal. It transformed, quietly, deliberately, like something invisible had been reset. The replacement crew arrived within minutes, moving with a level of focus that bordered on surgical precision. A new lead flight attendant, Daniel Harris, stepped on board first. Mid-50s, crisp uniform, calm eyes, the kind of presence that didn't need to announce authority to command it. He paused just inside the aircraft door, took in the room, not just the passengers, the energy, the aftermath. Then he stepped forward. "Good evening, folks," he said, voice warm but controlled. "Thank you for your patience. We'll be taking care of you from here. No performance, no overcompensation, just professionalism, real, measured, the kind that didn't fluctuate depending on who was sitting in which seat." Olivia didn't look up, but she noticed the tone, the difference. And somewhere, deep beneath the surface, she made a note. This is what it should look like. The door closed, sealed. The outside world cut off again. Inside, the aircraft began to breathe as one system. Engines humming, lights dimming slightly. The choreography of departure resumed. But the story was far from over. 3 rows back, the young man in seat 3B leaned over his tray table, eyes locked on his phone screen. His fingers moved quickly, editing, trimming, adding captions. He didn't dramatize anything. He didn't need to. The footage spoke for itself. Clear, raw, unfiltered. A timeline of power, assumption, and collapse. He typed a title. Simple. Direct. Then hit upload. By the time the aircraft pushed back from the gate, the video was already moving. Fast. Faster than anyone on board realized. Olivia sat in seat 2A, her laptop open, the glow reflecting faintly in her eyes. Lines of text filled the screen, her fingers moving with precision, drafting documents that would outlive this flight. Termination notices, internal memos, structural changes. Each sentence written with the same calm control she had shown in the aisle. Because this wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom. And she didn't treat symptoms. She removed causes. At 30,000 feet, the cabin settled into a steady rhythm. Soft lighting, low conversation, the quiet clink of glassware. Daniel moved through the aisle, offering service with consistency, not preference. No one was overlooked. No one was favored. Just respect. Equal. Unconditional. Olivia noticed that too. Another note. Hours later, as the aircraft began its descent, the world outside had already shifted. The video had crossed 100,000 views, then 1 million, then more. Comment sections flooded, clips reshared, conversations sparked. Not just about what happened, but why. Patterns, stories, people recognizing something familiar in what they saw. By the time the wheels touched down, the narrative was no longer contained to that cabin. It had spread, wide, fast, unstoppable. Olivia's phone vibrated the moment it reconnected. Once, then again, then continuously. Calls, messages, alerts. She glanced at the screen briefly, then set it face down. Control. Always control. She stood when the seatbelt sign turned off, collecting her things with the same quiet efficiency she had shown from the beginning. No rush, no hesitation. As she stepped into the aisle, Daniel was there. "Thank you for flying with us, ma'am," he said. She met his eyes, held them for a second. "Thank you for doing your job," she replied. Simple, but it meant more than it sounded. He nodded, because he understood. At the gate, a man in a tailored suit waited, posture stiff, expression tight. Regional management, mid-level, the kind that felt pressure from above, but rarely saw it directly. Until now. "Ms. Carter," he said quickly, stepping forward. "I can't begin to apologize. The apology isn't for me," Olivia said, walking past him without breaking stride. Her voice wasn't harsh, but it didn't slow. "It's for everyone who doesn't have my title." He followed half a step behind, scrambling to keep up. "Yes, of course, absolutely. We're already have a return flight booked," she said. "I'll be back before the weekends." He nodded rapidly. "Understood. And schedule a board review." That made him pause, just slightly. Then, "Yes, ma'am." She didn't look back, didn't need to, because the message had already landed. Monday morning. The boardroom. Glass walls. City skyline stretching out beyond it. Cold. Sharp. Unforgiving. 3 empty chairs at one end of the table. Files laid out. Evidence organized. Decisions made before anyone even sat down. When Olivia entered, the room shifted. Not visibly, but completely. Executives straightened. Silence settled. Because authority, real authority, didn't announce itself. It arrived, and everything adjusted around it. She took her seat at the head of the table, opened the first file, and began. No speeches, no theatrics, just facts, timelines, violations, patterns, each one laid out with precision, each one impossible to argue. When she finished, she closed the folder. Softly. "That behavior is not an exception," she said. "It is a reflection." No one interrupted. No one challenged. Because they couldn't. "We don't fix this with statements," she continued. "We fix it with standards." She stood, walked to the window, looked out over the city, then turned back. "Effective immediately, we implement mandatory training across all customer-facing roles. Real training. Not slides, not videos, accountability-based, a pause. We establish an independent reporting system. Direct, unfiltered, no internal filtering." Another pause, and we conduct unannounced audits. Every major hub, no exceptions. One of the executives shifted. "Costs will be significant," he said carefully. Olivia held his gaze. So is failure. Silence. That was the end of that conversation. Within months, the changes took hold. Data shifted. Complaints dropped. Satisfaction rose. But more than numbers, the culture changed. Quietly, steadily, because the message had been clear. Respect wasn't optional, and accountability wasn't negotiable. The video remained online, watched, shared, discussed. Not as a scandal, but as a lesson, a reminder. That power, when misused, exposes itself, and when confronted, it doesn't survive. Olivia Carter didn't make a speech about it, didn't take interviews, didn't turn it into a story about herself. Because it wasn't. It was about something bigger, something structural. something that only changes when someone is willing to stand still, while everything else tries to move them. And if this story meant something to you, if you felt that moment when power shifted and truth held its ground, take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop 3 words in the comments that capture what stayed with you most.